Are we live? Sure. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Hello. Good afternoon. I'm Craig Bolio, Tax Commissioner, and thanks for the opportunity to go through some of the tax policy changes that are in the governor's recommended budget that I'm sure you heard was released yesterday. And he's going to put a presentation up for me just to walk through some of these with some background and then what the proposals are. So we'll start on the next page if you could, Andy, please. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. So the first will be the property tax stabilization plan for fiscal year 26 that the governor mentioned in the speech yesterday, and then also 4 items that make up a $13.5 million individual tax relief package. And then I'll just briefly mention the change that the governor is proposing for the downtown and village center tax credit, but I would defer the details on that program.
Survivor benefits.
No
We didn't hear.
report.
I thought we did.
There, well, we'll get, we have a very limited exemption. For military
I thought
It was part of a package that we put together
And
that
then it didn't make it through.
we matched it with something else.
Okay.
Yeah, part of it made,
It was part of the negotiation.
yeah,
All right, because I remember doing.
yes. That was in 22.
So, yes. So the property tax stabilization plan. So the governor is setting aside in his budget, $77 million one-time general fund money to stabilize property taxes for fiscal year 26. So if aggregate education spending comes in at or below the projected levels from the December 1 letter, this would be enough to eliminate the projected property tax increase for fiscal year 26. There's also a waterfall construct in the budget that essentially says if additional surplus revenues are realized on the at the July e-board, those monies would be put aside to help with the education transformation. And there are a number of different ways that could be utilized, right? If you need additional stabilization in fiscal year 27 or help actually providing resources for that transition, there's a lot of different ways that you can use that. And there's a lot of flexibility in that language, but essentially setting it aside for education.
Okay, but that's dependent on having extra money come in.
That waterfall pieces, that's right.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, it seems that we're going to have several years of transitioning. And we're probably going to need to do some construction since we can't combine schools if the schools don't have the capacity, so.
Yeah, if I
I'm
recall
just
correctly.
wondering about, we see we at some point are going to need transition funding.
Yeah, so that is one of the uses that's flagged in that language. Funds may be used to support school consolidation, including construction and repurposing of buildings, property tax stabilization, and other necessary transformation costs.
Okay.
And I mean, of course, that would all be subject to the appropriation process of the legislature.
Yes,
I think that's the governor sending his goal of
Okay.
how to use that.
and we will, as usual.
Yes. So that's the first piece. Happy to move to the
Okay.
individual relief package. Cool. So this is a $13.5 million individual tax relief package. I think you folks have heard a lot from the governor about concerns about affordability for Vermonters. So the governor's budget proposes this $13.5 million individual tax relief package that's aimed at keeping more money in the pockets of working class Vermonters and retirees. It's building, each of these proposals is building on successful programs that are already on the books. And they have really, I think, 3 goals, right? Reducing poverty, enhancing our workforce, and ensuring that seniors can retire with dignity and independence. All in, the package probably provides, I shouldn't say probably, is estimated to provide relief to between 25 and 30,000 Vermonters. So it's focused on some key constituencies that we want to support, but it's also broad-based that it's impacting tens of thousands of Vermonters. So I'm going to go through 4 proposals. The first will be the child tax credit. So there's a federal child tax credit. It got a lot of attention during the pandemic because it was made more robust. It was made larger. It was made fully refundable. And that ended up getting scaled back at the federal level. It basically reverted to the pre-pandemic levels. There was a lot of research that showed that enhanced child tax credit at the federal level had a lot of positive benefits for kids and families, anti-poverty, reducing poverty effects. That research and the fact that it was scaled back at the federal level led several states, Vermont included, to start their own child tax credit programs. And Vermont has, again, there's a number of states that have it now, but Vermont has sort of been at the forefront of establishing that policy. So on the books today, we have a fully refundable $1,000 per child credit available for kids 5 and under. And the income thresholds go up to 125,000 for a full credit, and then phases out up to 175,000. The fully refundable piece of that credit is really important. That means that if the credit is larger than the tax liability, which can happen, particularly with low income filers, they get that difference back in a refund. And so that's really the fully refundable piece is a really effective part to make sure that it remains progressive and is getting money into the hands of low income folks. But the income limits go through middle income as well. So the proposal here is to increase the eligible age for children from 5 to 6. And we have an estimate, that would impact about 3,600 filers. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, 3,600 filers provided about $4.5 million of tax relief, bringing the estimated tax expenditure up to just under $30 million.
So I support this and very much in principle of this age group. My question is, I had 3 kids, and when my last kid finally entered public school, I felt like I paid off a loan. And so my question is, assume you're going to 6 because there are 6-year-olds that aren't in public school. Do you consider, and I know complexity costs you your systems a lot of heartache, would you consider that it maybe makes more sense to have it for 6 and under that are not enrolled in public school and to have a qualifier to that? But once you're in public school, the daycare expenses do drop off, is my point. Or if they're in full day kindergarten, is that a way to still target these dollars to the families that are paying for those childcare resources before they're in the public education system?
I do worry about administration. Yeah.
You understand what I'm asking?
I do. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to be tracking, because all we care about today is what was the age of the child on December 31st, right? And so now you have to start having some qualifier about when they were enrolled.
Still attestation.
Yeah, you could do that. There's challenges there. Yeah.
But that was the reason that it was set at 6, if I remember, because then you did go into school and some of those early childhood expenses diminished.
They become expensive in other ways.
No,
Yeah.
I was gonna say childcare, drops off, but then you have the summer care. So my nephew's 6, 7 years old going to summer care, and it's
Yeah.
$200-300 a week to do these different programs. So maybe if you want to increase that age even more.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a discussion. I know when it was originally brought up, and I don't want to speak for the legislature, right? But there was a policy reason for doing it at age 5, but it was also, there's a budgetary reason for that, right? And so, I mean, we have an opportunity here because revenues are fairly healthy to be expanding the program. It's not to say that further expansion can happen in the future as well.
Yeah.
The pitch from the governor right now is to go from 5 to 6, and that'd be about $4.5 million back in families' pockets.
And just if I may, Commissioner's exactly right. When we set it at 5, it was largely for budgetary reasons. We had to make the numbers right.
Right.
We had that conversation about like, should it go to 6 because of the school ages? But also we combined it in the package, if I remember correctly, with a slight expansion of the child care deduction.
That's right.
Yeah, so that was sort of like offsetting those expenses for childcare was the deduction for child dependent care. That was part of the package that we did. And we were looking forward to the next year working on the childcare bill. So sort of had a lot of rationalization.
And the Senate actually did away with this and used the money to pay for 6 weeks paid leave in the original child care bill. Because you can't put a child into child care for 6 weeks.
I think that was the next year.
Yeah, it was the
Yeah.
next year, the year after. But this is, the House felt very strongly that they wanted to keep this credit. It was Representative Ansell's last gift. So we've got lots of last gifts. But So it went back and we didn't get the 6 weeks paid leave in that bill. So it's been through some contortions, but it is where it started. Yeah, this proposal is to expand it.
That's right. Move to the next one. Cool. So the next one is the earned income tax credit.
Okay, did I see the cost on that one?
That one is $4.5 million, and we estimate impacting 3,600 in 5 years.
Okay,
So the earned income tax credit, this is another federal credit. Folks are likely familiar with the credit in this committee, but really aimed at helping low and modest income workers get a tax break. I think it's widely recognized by a lot of research and advocacy groups as one of the most successful anti-poverty programs in the country. Many states, I think 30 or more, have their own version of an earned income tax credit. Most of them, like Vermont's, piggyback the credit as a percentage. So on the books today, if you get a federal earned income tax credit, you can get a Vermont earned income tax credit that equals 38% of that. And that's something that has been increased a couple of times, I think, over the last several years.
the good thing about the earned income tax credit is if we give you an increase in almost any other welfare program, it counts against, if you hit the childcare cliff,
That's right.
it counts against your income. The earned income tax credit doesn't count against your income qualifying, doesn't count as income qualifying for other social safety net programs. So it's been a way that we've used to help people because half the time we give with one hand and it gets taken away with something else. This seems to be a way that we can help folks and not negatively impact other benefits that we receive.
Yeah, the child tax credit and earned income tax credit both have that benefit of being able to get more money in the pockets of these folks without impacting other benefits. So the proposal here is to increase the Vermont EITC for claimants that do not have dependents. And the proposal is to increase that from 38% to 100%. And the reason for that is this is something that a number of states are starting to do. The earned income tax credit federally starts to scale up very quickly with dependents, and it's a more modest amount when you are filing without dependents. And so some states have started to separate those percentages to say those with dependents will get a percentage. And then many states are starting to say those without dependents get 100% to try to make that credit more robust for those in the workforce who are low income that don't have dependents. So that's the pitch here, to be coupled with the child tax credit. This will be tax relief for those who don't have dependents. This is an estimated impact of $3 million for about 13,600 filers. So the total estimated expenditure for EITC then would be $27.5 million. So EITC and child tax credit are among our most robust tax expenditures for tax credits. This as well is fully refundable.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm new to this, so I'm learning a lot, but is this the type of thing that continues on once someone's getting Social Security as well?
Usually not. There are age limits in federal law that I believe are 18 to 65. And also you got to be in the workforce. So sometimes a retiree will collect both Social Security and have some wage income. And that would be possible, I think, to have both, but it's unusual. Sure. But let's talk about retirees. Moving on to the next proposal. So this is about increasing Vermont's Social Security income tax exemption. So a little bit of background. I'm on the wrong side. Abby's on the right side. A little bit of background on this from the federal standpoint. So Vermont's tax base for personal income taxes starts with adjusted gross income, right? So things that are generally in adjusted gross income will generally be part of Vermont's tax base. Things that are not in adjusted gross income will generally not be part of Vermont's tax base. So the first chart that you see on this slide is what the rules for federal treatment of Social Security are. And really the one that I would focus on is the last line that says it's basically all income limit, all incomes get at least a 15% break. on having to report Social Security. You don't have to report more than 85% of your Social Security benefits for federal taxation. That flows through to Vermont. In addition to that, many states, Vermont included, have state level exemptions. So 41 states just say no tax on Social Security at all, any of it. Out of the 9 states that do have state exemptions, including Vermont, but those other states, most of them have more robust or more generous exemptions than we do. And if you look at the next slide, that lays out how it works in Vermont. And basically what it says is if you're a single filer, you can get a full exemption from for Social Security up to $50,000. And if you're married filing joint, you get a full exemption up to $65,000 of income. And then those exemptions fade out over the next $10,000 of income. So what we're talking about here in terms of a proposal is to increase those thresholds by $5,000. And that was done last in 2022. These are not indexed. So these are just static numbers in the law. So since 2022, there's been a lot of inflation. Social Security benefit amounts have gone up, incomes have gone up. And so essentially what has happened is there was an effort to have more people brought into that tent of getting an exemption, but then they've been pushed out of it with the effects of inflation. So the goal here is to try to restore part of that by increasing these thresholds by $5,000.
Are you gonna recommend that we index them going forward?
This proposal does not index them. It just increases it by $5,000.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Couldn't fill in that question. Do we index anything, or it seems like everything has to come back to us? I've raised this before, and I've been told we have to, as a legislature, approve any increases in tax rates or fees.
No, there are things that get indexed.
Comparable to this?
Yeah, I mean, the way our earned income tax credit is structured, piggybacking the feds, that gets indexed at the federal level. Do our brackets get indexed? Yeah, the brackets get indexed. So there are some, I would say that it's sort of a mix. There are a number of things that are not indexed, and some that are, like, for instance, the child tax credit income thresholds are not indexed, right? That's just a hard number, 125, 175. So I'm assuming at some point that'll have to be adjusted in the future, right? Yeah. So that proposal, if that were to be enacted, the increase of the 5,000 to the thresholds is about $2.1 million expenditure. We estimate that impacts about 8,300 filers, and that would bring the total for that tax expenditure up to $10.3 million. Cool, moving forward. Ones that veterans of the legislature will know, an issue very close to the governor's heart is exempting military retirement pay and survivors benefits. So 35 states don't tax these benefits at all. And that includes most of our regional neighbors. Every state except one provides some tax benefit for it. California is the only state that fully taxes military pensions. 2022, as folks were discussing in this committee, there was a partial exemption for military retirement pay put in, but it has the same income thresholds as the Social Security exemption. But more importantly, you're not allowed to take both. And so it's a very narrow band of folks who can actually claim this exemption right now. Yeah, and so it's not a very robust exemption right now, and it's much less generous than virtually every other state. So, you know, from the governor's standpoint, there's really two elements to this. One is to celebrate the military service of these folks who put in the time to get the pension, and also, and this is noted in a JFO issue brief, I think the national data shows that over 70% of military retirees retire between the ages of 35 and 50 and often re-enter the civilian workforce.
35 that have to enter the military at 15.
I'm just citing what's on the paper from JFO, but I suspect it's probably closer to 38. Yeah.
I would.
But the JFO issue brief says 35 to 50. So I'm just citing the numbers that I got there.
What was their rank when they retired? Is that in there?
It's not in there.
Okay.
The military from time to time lasts for 15-year retirement.
Okay.
So it's possible to capture.
Is this a moment where we can give comment? Or should
No,
I
we're
hold
just
on it?
listening.
Okay,
We have the bill on the wall,
okay.
and we will
Thank
actually
you
at
for-
some point have bills on the wall. For all the other tax, or it'll come in miscellaneous tax, but I assume it will come.
It will be introduced in the
It will be introduced, yes. and
Uh,
probably in the
How it
House.
comes over to you is not up to me.
That's right. or if.
I had the impression it was a lot more than 3.9 million, but you're saying to fully exempt military paid survivor benefits, it would cost us, we're taking in 3.9 million right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that, then I want you, because I'm gonna do military, we'll do special classes. Firefighters, police, firefighters are dropping dead from rare cancers at the age of 45. Police, border patrol, as we found out, every one of them puts their life on the line every day to protect the public. So I'm not sure how you say yes to one group, that they're more special than other
I'll
groups.
still give you my argument, but I don't know if you want it right now.
No.
Yeah,
There will be plenty of time to
Battle for
debate this.
many years.
I make no judgment on those other professions or the validity of that, but I would say there's potentially legal challenges with that. That I would encourage the committee to explore, that there are federal rules that essentially say if you exempt a state level pension from taxation, you have to exempt federal pensions. The military retirement doesn't create that same issue because it is a federal pension.
Pension, so I
and
can
so-
reduce, they have a law that says I can exempt their pensions, but not mine. But if I do their
Essentially.
pension, why can't I do police?
I'm not here explaining why the federal government has that law, but they, did I say that correctly? Yeah. So that's something that I would, I understand where that argument is coming from, but it may be preempted by the fact that federal law would essentially prohibit that or require the state to exempt all federal pensions from taxation if they wanted to exempt certain state pensions from tax.
Piece of cake. But we can exempt some federal from taxation.
You could exempt federal pensions from taxation. The law just prohibits
not
exempting
state.
state. That's right.
Even if we-
Unless federal
Yes.
pensions, all federal pensions. are
All
the same.
federal.
Am I, yes, am I misspeaking?
State, that the feds can exempt, we can exempt some federal from state
Yes.
taxation, but we can't exempt any state pensions from taxation
Without
And-
also exempting federal.
without doing all federal pensions from taxation.
I believe it is close to that, if not exactly that.
Sounds like,
I'm not doubting whether you're right, but that's crazy.
Yeah.
Analogous federal pensions is what my attorney is telling me.
and now,
And this is one of the reasons when we were doing the 2022 thing, remember we did also, there was that small slice of, was it retired?
Civil
service.
Civil service,
Retiree,
retired,
yes.
retirees, do you remember the stuff?
Yeah, railroad, I think, in there too.
railroad was the big one, all your postmistresses out in Maple Corners. That were working with the federal government, but were also getting social security because they worked somewhere else. So when we did this in 22, we treated everyone the same. Everyone gets the same exemption up to the same income level. And we did do survivors benefits, but apparently that didn't make it through.
Yeah, I don't
We
think-
were working on a budget. Good budget.
One question is, Craig, what's an analogous federal pension? What is
Well,
that?
now that I'm realizing I should have said analogous and not all, I'm wondering if I should stop discussing legalese off the
Yes.
cuff. That's not an attorney.
We can get,
But we'll get back to you on that, Senator.
I don't know.
until the railroad retirees sue us, it'll be what we say it is. But
Yeah,
whoever we don't exempt will go to court and ask what it is.
Yeah, and I would just say to close that topic, I know that many states that, like I think New York has pretty broad exemptions for federal pensions because they also exempt teacher pensions, I think. So it's a lot of states that have taken a broad range of that.
They've
when they're
got
trying
much
to do that.
bigger tax base.
For sure, for
I
sure.
mean, we have a small tax base.
Yes,
And every time we exempt, that opens the door to exempt. And that means either we've got to cut services, which some of these people need, or we have to increase everybody else's taxes.
But that's why I would say the governor is putting forward an exemption that will not create those kind of legal challenges and blind-based requirements for that.
Just the loss of revenue.
That's right. So that one is 3.9 million for 4,300.
Yeah, so we're up to about 15 million. 13 and a half.
Yeah, if we go to the next slide, you'll see all of the things put together, right? So 13.5 million tax relief back to individuals. The just under 30,000 impacted filers there. I would note there's some overlap there, right? So we're not saying that that's 30,000 unique taxpayers. There's overlap with CTC and EITC and Social Security and military pension, but again, it's a broad-based impact while still being focused in the areas that the governor feels it's important to provide relief.
It's probably not much though. It's overlapping.
I would guess there's not a ton. I've been saying probably between 25 and 30,000 filers. And then I would just quickly chat about that the governor's budget also increases the cap on the downtown and village center tax credit. This is a program that has a cap of $3 million on the books now. He wants to increase it to $5 million. Again, I would defer to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development for details on that program, but my understanding is that it's widely seen as successful. It's oversubscribed, and it helps stimulate private investment for rehabbing both commercial buildings and also rentals. And I believe probably Chris Cochran from ACCG would be the right person to talk about that.
I think he's here every year.
That's my list.
Okay. Okay.
So this is like deja vu. Feels like.
Well, I mean, these are things that have been, the child tax credit was put in law a few years ago. So this is an expansion of that. The EITC was expanded a few years ago from 36 to 38. So this is an expansion of that. So it's really trying to build on stuff that the legislature has talked about, understood the value that is working, how we hope it will. And then enhancing that so we can get more money in the pockets of folks who need it.
Couple other, we will get briefing on the budget because there are some things in there that are not funded, like community-based services. If this money goes here, it doesn't go somewhere else. So we will see if we can get a 6,000 foot look at the budget, what's in and what's out. I think our joint fiscal people are still working on that. The other unknown out there is, I guess they rescinded the federal freeze on payments, but that doesn't mean that they won't come back in another form or in a more limited measure. We know that Medicaid is probably going to take a hit if they do it. And so there are other moving parts in the budget that we've got to look at before we start giving up revenue. As much as many of us would like to do that. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Tomorrow we've got the Agency of Education coming in, and hopefully I'm still trying to get a list that, I don't know, Charlotte, do you think we could get a whiteboard in here? I'd like to start doing a list of things we know about the education proposal and things we need to know.
Gosh, there's not gonna be room on a whiteboard.
And
That's
there
not-
probably is, and I'm thinking I'll keep a notebook, but I mean, right now we know we've got a foundation formula. I've heard, but we haven't heard testimony that is based on the PICUS model. Yeah, and we will have joint fiscal come in and talk to us about PICUS. But we don't know what it is.
What the amount of the.
Yeah, what, we don't know what, and we don't, as of noon today, Julia didn't have enough information to start calculating what that payment was. We heard the proposal for the property credit. I don't know, I've heard Brad James is back part-time, but we won't know how many people and who will be affected by that positively or negatively.
You changed the exemption.
Oh, are you talking about the thing we heard about last?
Yeah,
week?
the property, the
Jake's
property,
proposal?
yeah,
Yeah, Jake's the guy for that.
Yeah, you can come in whenever you need to.
but we don't have any numbers.
You didn't have numbers in this presentation?
Well, numbers about, we got, you know, if you own this house and you got that house, and we had the picture of the nice house and whether you were paying primarily on your income or primarily on your property. What we've gotten before, what we got with the weights from James was how different groups of taxpayers
Oh,
and
yeah.
how many in that group are the majority going to be paid losing half their benefit, or the majority gaining, are who's going to be hit.
We got all that. We can.
Okay, if you can get that for us, that would be great.
Yeah, I would say just,
Okay.
just ask Jake to come in and walk through that.
Okay, that would be good. All right.
I want to ask a question about the budget.
Yeah.
Address piece about the 10 million toward PCDs, or is that not, is this not?
That's in schools, but I don't know that the tax.
I don't know the answer to that one.
Okay, okay. I'll
I
have
can
the
almost
next one.
guarantee you.
That's about what we put in. No, I think it was on 3 million we put aside.
It's, I think he brought up another 10 million
He did.
yesterday. Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's going toward, but I can hold my question for the.
Well, we stopped testing because we ran out of.
No,
money. And I heard him
I
say
know.
testing and remediation. And I know with the money that we had set aside, they were buying remediation equipment, which they got bulk purchase on and could sell to the schools at cost. And there was paint that you painted over things. There were carbon filters.
Yeah, fans, you name it.
Yeah, there were things that are almost universally used to mitigate that the state was buying in bulk.
Right.
But we will find out.
If it's
Yeah.
new money going to new projects, or if it's money that's being used to pay for projects that have already been completed, that's what I'm curious about.
Okay,
I have a question maybe.
yeah,
So
Not like-
with this plan, and I know you're not here to talk about it, but a big question in my mind is with 5 districts, or if there's 14 districts in the envisioned outline that Zoe Saunders and yourself are going to be laying out. Will communities vote differently within those districts on different funding levels? And then if not, then what is we're still talking about when communities want to spend more than that. So I just don't know how the individual votes would be, what they would be voting on, and how that would be broken down community by community, or would it be the entire district and vote on a rate?
that's
might be
probably
higher
something to
level?
ask the commissioner, secretary tomorrow.
That's what I understand.
I would love to come back soon and have a very robust discussion about it. Well, very good question there.
Yeah, it depends on how we set up the governance structure for each district.
We'll still be voting on budgets.
It's a good question.
Well,
If
that's,
you spend more than the days.
and that's the other question of us, you know,
Yeah, that we've seen.
Good
question.
is above base spending. And how do we do we allow that? And how does that apply, comply with Brigham? How do we get that fenced in so we aren't back in court? I'm pretty sure there's at least one lawyer that already has his appeal drafted.
Bob Ginsburg's widow has made a personal request to me too.
Yeah,
I might say that there are a lot of these kind of details that have to be worked out. The plan that's going to get presented will have recommendations because there are things that we've thought through, but also recognizing that there are a variety of ways to do things. And so looking forward to having a collaborative discussion.
we've heard somewhere, I've heard that most other schools only have 3 weights, and what do we have? At least 5. or 7, you know? So,
Yeah,
Are you asking me?
yeah, how many-
Poverty, ELL, density,
Rural, oh, that's the
Density, yeah.
density, middle school, high school, pre-K.
pre-K.
And then there's one other, I think we have
I
said.
thought we had 7 and most states have 3, so we've got the weights, how many and how much,
That's not me.
uh, that we don't know.
It is.
We don't know the cost,
Yeah, so it's small school.
and we don't know, I've heard a statewide property tax,
Another question
yeah.
that I have is these school advisory boards and committees, and will there be, I'm looking forward to seeing if there's recommendations as to
He's
what
the
would be. I know.
But that's,
Part of this.
that's down the
What
hall.
decisions do they have control over or not have control over, and what's going to be at the school board district versus those advisory?
And that,
Great question from the
Yeah.
secretary.
and that's what we got with down the hall in education, that kind of, what do you vote on, what do you, but we're gonna be working as closely as possible with them, because this all hangs together, and it's gotta march in lockstep, or it's not gonna work, so. But, I still haven't heard a cost estimate, and I've heard mention of a statewide grand list and property tax, which is where we started in Act 60 with $1.10. But we haven't gotten those numbers yet. And then how do we transition? Because we aren't gonna do this all in one year. I don't think we're gonna get this all put together in 1 year, nor should we. And,
Well, the plan,
but we are gonna have where we're going in 1 year. We're gonna have to say, this is where we're going, this is what it's gonna cost, this is how we're gonna phase it in. Because we're coming up with 77 million to buy down the 5% increase this year. But unless this committee can get health insurance costs under control,
It's all for naught.
we're gonna be looking at 7% next year and the year after, and we are likely not at some point going to have a 77. Well, no, because next year we'll have to buy it down to 5% from this year plus the 5% from next year. And that's on top of the 14% from last year. So we've set a huge base increase. And we've got to get the cost under control without hurting it.
I was wondering how much of that. Of that revenue that we brought in was related to the eclipse, which will not be coming back anytime soon.
Not any of our ones. My neighbor does remember the first eclipse. She turned 100 in the summer.
I'm so curious if that.
just since I think we're on this topic, on the timeline piece, I did read that 17-page document that came out, and I know it lays out 3 years, but the other big questions for me is what would we be doing incrementally along the way? What decisions would be made next year for that timeline, especially related to the tax piece to this, what the transition is going to look like?
That's gonna be the transition.
I think
We're
from your-
still, joint fiscal is still trying to get their head around the numbers so they can broach them for us, so we know what we're doing. I'm hoping tomorrow we will get enough information so we can start filling in the blanks. But I'm looking for any other things we don't know, we need to know.
Building, school construction aid, how that fits into this whole thing.
And we're going to have you talk to us.
Okay.
Next week?
Friday.
Friday.
Friday,
Okay.
right?
Oh,
Me,
Oh, you.
me.
She was on the task
You're on the
force.
task force.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So we'll hear what they do. Yes, we're dead.
Thanks.
You don't have to go through this anymore. Yeah, we've got to, I think we're gonna have very limited success in consolidating.
Thank you, guys.
Can't
Bye.
build some capacity. We don't have that many schools that can hold another school's worth of kids, never mind 4 schools worth of kids. Which would get in several of my districts to the, is it 300 to 500 for the elementary and there's national numbers that, and I think we can get Picus to talk to us, that his computer model says leads is cost effective and leads to the best educational outcome. And that's what they do. Picus did an update on the study he had done from us last year. I came in, I think, like the first part of January, but it didn't get out. It didn't get out because our numbers were so far below any kind of national norms that they were trying to take them down. And the bottom line was we were so small.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
It doesn't really fit.
just there's no economies of scale. We're way beyond that. So
Can I make one quick recommendation?
yeah, sure.
I went to the House and Senate combined meeting yesterday afternoon since we didn't have a meeting and I know none of us have extra time, but if you have a little bit of time, Ed, sorry, yeah, if you have time, you could watch it at 2 times speed, but they did talk about governance for these districts and what that could look like. It's all hypothetical because who knows, but the difference between, doing, like a, what am I thinking of? Charter, like making these districts charters, versus giving rulemaking authority or, authority to the local communities. I mean, it's all up in the air, but I recommend, because Beth St. James went through it at the high level legal level, and it was interesting. A lot to think about.
Yeah. The word charter will send shock.
I know, not charter school, but charter, like Burlington has a charter that has to be decided, that gets changed in the legislature. So, yeah,
School district charter, like
School district.
town
Like,
charter.
like a
Yeah.
town charter.
yeah,
All right.
Our district just talked about it ourselves, a charter.
Yeah.
City
Yeah.
charter.
Burlington got to do a local options tax because their charter, which was done in 1700, I think, allowed them to regulate local establishments of victual.
One other thing I was gonna say, we're brainstorming a list of unknowns is.
Yes.
Everybody likes to pick on Chittenden County, and so what I'll just say is Chittenden County is different, and
Yes.
Chittenden County is 3 times as many people as the others, so. As much as I think the 14 or the 12 district model can make more sense, I'd also really advocate for sub-districts. So if you pick a certain amount of pupils, if we really go down this path, but I don't think Chittenden County with Grand Isle and Franklin is really equatable or equitable, choose your term, to counties with a 5th or 8th as many
Yes.
kids. So I think there needs to be sub-districts that are somewhat
Oh.
population.
Districts and regions.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to get a cost-effective, educationally effective school size so that you can afford to offer computer programming with Legos in kindergarten to all kids. Basically means you can afford to hire a teacher who knows how to do computer programming with Legos, that you can offer robotics, that you can offer maybe more than one language. Is any other than our neighbors to the north and only in one. I think you might be better off learning Chinese in this day and age or Arabic than French.
I do like
But
that.
I mean, depending on where you want to go.
I think, there are two inescapable truths that everybody has to keep in mind when we go through this whole thing. And one is that every child within a district has to have equal opportunity. And the other is one person, one vote.
Yeah.
And those two truths, they really kind of hover over this whole conversation.
What do you mean specifically? I mean, I know about the concept, but one person, one vote. What do you mean by that?
Well, when you're talking about within a district, within a fiduciary entity, that when decisions are made that affect the entire district, every child in the district, that you have to adhere to the one person, one vote.
Yeah.
When it goes to that district making decisions for itself.
Would have to be proportional.
As
Yeah.
opposed
Yeah.
to,
One town, one vote.
Yeah.
Which has been tried.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
really more
yeah.
proportional representation.
Yeah,
is what you're trying to say.
Proportional,
Okay,
or one
okay.
person, one vote, however you want to.
Okay.
And I will.
I'm worried there that the smaller towns will be overshadowed by population centers. Well, there's larger districts, and that's
Yeah,
what we
no.
need to explore.
And that's why we have to
One day.
Yeah.
do the districts logically.
Yes.
Is it Will?
There can be wars within districts.
Yeah.
But,
Set
yeah.
up for you tomorrow.
Yeah,
Just
no,
need
it's true.
a few minutes.
But I agree with your first point.
Let's try to set it up.
I am open to this conversation further because I see this as possibly achieving sense the educational opportunity for kids throughout the month. So I think that's
Are we-
worth one conversation.
We are brainstorming,
Oh,
but
that's dangerous.
we are still live. But everybody's been
It's fine.
think about the questions that you have. Because I'm trying to get us up, there's a lot of unknowns. We're gonna have to eventually. Well, the other committee is talking about sizes and governance. We're going to have to be talking about paying for it, but we need to know what it is before we can figure out how to pay for it. So gonna work that through. We did get the 181 page, and I'll try and get an afternoon, not Friday, to go through the health insurance. It's keeping bill.
The what?
health
The
insurance.
181 page health insurance housekeeping bill.
Oh, it's a housekeeping bill, the thing that the lieutenant governor was like, what the heck? I was.
Jen Carvey told me it is all housekeeping, just making sure the same term means the same thing in every statute. This probably takes in effect something like 20 years of statutes. And terminology changes over time.
I love that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I give it to my, just go and go off that you read the whole.
Well,
Give it its bill
we'll
and fix
get
it right.
it, or you can get a copy down in the boxes. and
Maybe I
read
will.
it.
I'll just spend some time with Jen. That's always nice
And
too.
Jen, we will have Jen in someday next week. And we'll knock out our first.
Hi, she's in on Wednesday.
She's coming in on
Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay.
Can I have the last word on French? Okay, on French.
Yeah, I was waiting for you.
Okay, it is an important language.
Yes.
It is a lot of people's second language. It gets you pretty much
That's
all
here.
over Europe, West Africa for sure, the Middle East, and north of us as well. So it is still
It
very
is, no,
important.
but there's also Chinese,
There is.
there's
Okay.
Arabic, and when you're going
I'm
into
gonna-
commerce.
So fine.
All my grandson speak French, I cannot. It stopped a fight at
Certainly will.
daycare because they were
On the planet.
picking on him, and his cousin says he speaks French. Or starts talking in French.
Au revoir.
Yeah,
Au revoir.
au revoir.
Au revoir.
Last word.
À bientôt.
À la prochaine.
I'm half French Canadian.